I moved here 20 years ago, I swear, it was so hard to meet any professional women. And then the first year they had, so when they had this conference for the first time 4 years ago, I'm like, where were all these people? It was so awesome to see a room of 400 women professionals who were all interested in connecting and helping each other out on their career paths. So thank you to Jean, who took this spark and ran with it, and to all of you who put this together. I know how much incredible work this is. One more thank you is, I assume, does anybody have a booklet right now? Okay, does anyone not have a booklet? You will need your own booklet and a pen. Okay?
One right there.
One does not have a booklet. All right, can you just pass one on back? There we go. Great, thank you. So the other thank you is to the artist for my concept, who is Mara Doan over here in the peach sweater. And she is a genius at turning chicken scratch into beautiful slides. I have this idea, and Mara's like, oh, we could do this with it. So thank you for making me look much better than I otherwise would. So the reason when Jean and I talked about a workshop, the reason that I wanted to do something on inflection points are because I do a lot of executive coaching. I've had a strategic planning consulting practice for about 20 years here, and I do a lot of executive coaching inside that practice, and I just kept hearing this theme. And I was hearing it from my clients, and it didn't really matter what stage of career they were at. I was hearing it from my young clients who were thinking about, what do I need to do to prepare myself for the next step? And then I was hearing it from other clients who may be closer to my age, empty nesters, trying to think about, okay, am I going to move inside this organization? If so, how am I going to do that? How do I have to set things up? Or am I going to take a really radical move? I'm not sure I'm going to jump out of an airplane, but do I take a really radical career step? Do I take time off, do other training, do other things? So it just seemed like it was in the air. And after hearing Melissa's keynote this morning, I thought, oh my gosh, I must have been channeling her when I designed this, because there's a lot of pieces in here just that will reinforce a lot of the themes that she spoke to this morning. So I also have great role models for inflection points. My grandmother took a train from Philadelphia to North Dakota, which took several days, and became the teacher in a one-room schoolhouse, where she had to figure out how to teach the 8th grade boys who were only in school half the year because they were working on the farm the other half of the year, and she had to figure out how to teach the 2nd and 3rd graders how to read. So she was very enterprising, and she just like took off from the civilized world of Philadelphia to North Dakota. I also get inspiration from my own mother, who at 50 went back to college to get a PhD, had a whole second career as a professor, retired at 80, and about 3 weeks after that, she got married to my stepfather. My father had died 10 years earlier, and so she does inflection points in all aspects of her life. So that was part of the inspiration from this. And I myself have just become an empty nester. It's like kind of weird. The first 6 months you buy way too much food. And then you start thinking about, okay, so all those things that I thought I had to do every day, I could do something different. So I've been sort of exploring, which way do I want to take my consulting practice? Are there things outside my consulting practice I want to do? So I brainstormed this framework. And this framework is in its beta version. You are the beta testers of this framework. So I would love to hear from you. Here are places that, afterwards, here's what worked for me, here's what didn't work for me. Here, and take it and tweak it. Make it work for you as we go along with this. Because this is all sort of an exploration and discovery process. So in this process, I recognize that most of us in this room are pretty much at the top of Maslow's hierarchy. We're looking for self-actualization. How do I follow my bliss? How do I find my courage? How do I do what I am meant to do? How do I sync up with, what I think my greatest purpose in my life is? And so I just want to acknowledge that, just because I am so grateful to have my physical needs met. I have an awesome husband and family. I love where I live. I have had a rewarding career, and so I just feel like this is frosting work. And maybe it's also core, but it's also, I just feel so grateful to be working at this place in Maslow's hierarchy. And I'm really looking for that self-fulfillment piece. So, you've noticed probably, has anybody else been in a workshop where it was not static? You did not sit still for the whole time? Well, you now know a little bit about me, and I just heard a great warmer-upper in the last workshop I was in. She was like, okay, on the count of 3, everybody say your first name. 1, 2, 3.
Jade.
Okay, well now we know everybody's name. But I'd like to let you know a little bit more about each other, and we're gonna pick just a few people to do a mingle with. So don't get too cozy in your chair yet. You're gonna want to be cozy in a minute. Just leave all your stuff there. But here's how this mingle works. To answer the question, what are you becoming? I want you to test things out, right? So. No inhibition here, don't freeze. You could be saying, I'm becoming terrified because we're now doing it. You could also be saying, I am becoming a graduate student. Or you could say, I'm becoming a leader. I'm becoming a teacher. Whatever you feel like you're becoming, and it can be existential, it can be personal, it can be career-wise, and here's the other piece of it, you can change with every person you talk to. Nice. You can check it out, you can borrow somebody else's, try it out. What am I becoming? No one's going to hold you to it, right? Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes. That's the conversation. I've watched this group. You are hard to control. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. The mingle is just what I am becoming. What I am becoming. And let's not ask questions. It's partly just be with that for a moment. And then try out something else that you like, or stick with the thing that you want to try out and say, okay, I'm going to say this 3 times and see if I believe myself. Okay? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. Ready? Right. Did you meet some cool people?
Yes.
All right. Are we becoming a lot of really cool things?
Yes.
Can you feel the energy in the room? Just like, woo! So cool. All right. All right. So, awesome. So try those things out. And now you know a few people around here and where we're headed, so that's great. The next thing I want to do is kind of explain this workbook / model / beta test on inflection points. And all of these slides are in your workbook, workbook. We'll kind of call it a workbook. Feel free to take notes all over that. Write down what works for you, what resonates for you, what ideas come into your head. I don't know about you, but one of the things that I find really helpful about conferences is that something else goes to work in my brain while I'm sitting in another session. So I wanted to make sure you had some place to write down whatever that is. Maybe it's part, tonight's dinner, but whatever it is, you can sort of download it in this book and stay present and be absorbing what we're talking about here. So, inflection point. In math, an inflection point is where the curvature of the curve changes, the perspective changes, right? So on this curve, the inflection point is where the curve goes from concave to convex, right? And here's how I'm applying this in terms of career. I use a similar model when I talk about life cycle of a business. You can use it for your life. You can use this model to think about a lot of things, to go from current state to future state. But in your job, usually, in your career, you start out really excited about something. Oh, my first job. Is anybody in their first job? Yeah, a few of you? Yeah, first job, right? So were you pumped when you got your first job?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So you start with this great excitement and energy, and you gradually build your skills, and you start learning, oh, this is what it actually takes to do this job. A little bit like what Melissa talked about this morning. There's some uphill stuff here, right? We got to sort of go into this growth mode. Then usually what happens is you get additional responsibilities. If you're in a small business, that tends to be a lot of your career growth. If you're in a larger company, there may be a promotion path or something that fuels your career. And then at some point you start thinking about what's next. And that tends to happen right around here. Not to say that this part of the curve isn't important, it is. This part of the curve is, a lot of times, it's mastery, it's consistency, it's some level of confidence. But it's definitely keeps going until you sort of hit a plateau point. Has anyone ever hit a plateau in their job? Yeah, you can hit a plateau, right? And then you're like, okay, what's next? What's going to happen? And has anybody ever stayed in a job so long that they felt like, I don't even do this job very well anymore because I don't care enough, or I get a little stagnant? You start to sort of decline your, yeah. So it's sort of a natural curve. What this workshop is going to help you think about, and we're going to actually spend some time working on it, is to capture the curve somewhere between here and here to start the next S-curve up, right? What's the next phase of my career? And it can start as early as here. You know, a lot of times we start playing with this here before we actually make the move, but right here is where you feel like, oh, perspective shift. Something I need to change in here, something I need to play with. Maybe you need to learn to swim. Maybe you need to learn, you know, Excel. Maybe you need to learn public speaking. All these different things that you can, you know, sort of start exploring. Or maybe you need to expand your network. So those are all things that can come in that place. But what I think of is our careers, and I know this is linear and one-dimensional. I would love to be able to take this on an axis and just spin it like this. So it was a three-dimensional model, but PowerPoint's not that good yet. So you get the idea. It's multidimensional. Sometimes it has branches. But to think of your career as this series of S-curves with all these different inflection points. Okay? Are there some inflection points in particular that you're thinking about? Are you here sort of because that sort of resonated? Like, I was just at a women's retreat, and this is a group of women who I know have my back. Every year, a group of women from my business school class gets together one weekend a year, and it is like, it feeds me. You know, I have this great network, and things have, you know, all the stuff that you worry about, or we worry about, I shouldn't speak for it, but we worried about when we were younger, like, oh my gosh, am I going to be successful enough? Am I going to make it? Is my family falling apart? Oh my God, if I get divorced, is that like the worst thing on the planet? You know, all these things, all the insecurities that used to bubble up are not there. Everybody's there for each other. Everybody's there to support each other. And we do this listening thing where everybody gets 20 minutes to talk, and you just have a sharing piece. So that may be a model you want to play with in your life at your inflection point. Maybe you have a book club that's like that. I have a friend who has a book club where I don't think they read anymore. But they are tight. And they never miss a beat. So those are some of those kinds of things that really help propel us in our careers in terms of going forward, is that kind of networking. So here's the map. And again, this is like we're playing with this. So here are the stages. And we're not going to do them in this order, but this is linearly what matches the curve. So validation. This is really important. I notice that women have a lot harder time doing this. And maybe not than men, but it screams in my ears when I'm working with a woman or coaching with a woman, is that this is a lot harder for them to realize how many of their experiences are solid experience that they are building on. Right? So that's a validation place. What is it that you have done so well? What is it that you do that you can leverage into experience for your next S-curve up? And also you'll notice there's a top side and a bottom side to this curve. On the underside is a little bit of the shadow side. It's the step that's harder. Sometimes it's easier for us to access that as a first step than the top half of the curve, right? So you may know that the reason you took that job right out of college is that, you know, you had a family to support, and you had a lot of shoulds, like I should be working, I should stay in this job. It's a good enough job, so I shouldn't bail and go to another job. You know, but you may have a lot of shoulds there. You know, there may be some dissatisfaction in your sort of current state. And the place that we are, and the place that we want to go is up at the top part of the curve. And that's sort of like those life goals. Melissa talked about this morning. One of my favorite examples is a friend of mine who learned to play the piano at 55. And you know, he'd been thinking he was going to play the piano for 10 years, and finally at 55 took piano lessons because he realized that in 10 years he'd be 65. And he either would have learned to play the piano, or he wouldn't have learned to play the piano, but he'd still be 65. Right? So, you know, you kind of have to see, what are those life goals out there? What are some jobs that, as you look around, I could do that job. I want to do that job. This is the next place for me in my career. Or cross-departmentally, if you're, oh, hi, I just stole one of your tricks.
Oh, good. Use it.
We all introduced ourselves in 5 seconds. Welcome. There's a couple of chairs up here, and there's booklets up here.
I'm traveling right now. Thank you, Cynthia.
Okay, sure. So the top part of the curve is, again, aspirational. What are you anticipating? What would you like to be doing? What do you know your core purpose is? And what I do find is a lot of people have easier access to this at first on the negative side. I don't want to do this anymore. These are my constraints. I have to make this much money or else. Or I don't want to work more than 3 days a week. We hear that a lot in Ashland. Here are some things that you give me. But sometimes people have better access to those pieces. And interestingly enough, sometimes constraints help us get creative, right? I have to make so much money. I only want to work 3 days a week, so I can, be with my kids or with my parents or whatever else. And sometimes that helps spark the next creative thought. Sometimes just having the, complete blank slate leaves you wandering in the wilderness, wondering, where next, right? So those are the two ands, and we're going to create some tension between those two as we work through this in the workshop, in terms of starting with the future and then grounding in where I am in now. And then we're going to spend some time working on the inflection point, which is this exploration place. And this is in terms of, what do I need to do to move, to change my perspective, to get a different angle. This is, you do get those different perspectives. You take something apart, you put it back together, but you're going to put it back together differently. And some of those things are, networking, coming to a conference like this. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm at conferences, I meet this person who really, in that moment, is the person I needed to meet. It's like, oh my gosh, I got a card from a woman who sings Eastern European music, and she's a voice coach. This is unbelievable. That was my last conference. I'm like, how did I meet you in a crowd of 500 people? Like, well, I want to really cool person to meet. So this is thinking about what do I have to rearrange in my life? What do I have to learn? On the other side, has anybody read this woman's book about clearing out your house and sparking joy, Marie Kondo? Right. Sometimes you have to clear stuff, right? You have to clear your house, you have to clear your mind, clear space for the next piece. It's like, oh my gosh, I work 60 hours a week. How am I possibly going to have space to explore this? So what might you have to clear up? You have to save some money. It's like, oh, I need a little runway here, We used to call that a something fund in the old days, right? But so that if you want to leave your job, you could. And then in other places, you kind of have to overcome things. And some people work with coaches, some people work with therapists, some people work with a group of good friends. And this is Mara's brilliance here. She's like, okay, Cynthia, so you say you want people to take next steps, but I don't get how this goes with this. It's separate. And so this is Mara's great innovation on saying nothing happens without those first steps, right? So this is going to be doodle space for you in terms of what are those steps. But nothing happens in here from get to here without this being pretty full, right? So you've got the model here. There is a blank one at the end that I will encourage you to then transcribe things to later. But we've got the worksheets, the scribble all over, the write all over, and then if you like things really neat that you want to put up in front of your desk, you have a blank one at the back that you can fill in the blanks for that. But so that's our roadmap for the next 35 minutes. Any questions or reactions, thoughts about that? Not yet? Okay. Great. So, turn to this worksheet and notice we're at that top part of the curve. This is looking forward, my desired future, where I want to be. Now, there's quite a menu of questions there, above and below. And those questions don't all relate to each other, but hopefully one or two will light up for you. And what I'm going to ask you to do is spend 3 or 4 minutes thinking and writing. This is something we know about how adults learn, is adults learn through reflection. We don't learn by just cramming in more stuff, right? But we learn by synthesizing, by reflecting, by thinking. So I'm going to ask you to just take 3 or 4 minutes. Certainly, you're not going to answer all of those questions, but scan through them and say, this one really lights up for me. It's like, this is what in my heart I know I want to do. I have an answer to that question right now. Also notice the questions you have some resistance to. Those might be where there's some real information. Or start at the other side of the curve, saying, okay, so what are my real constraints, right? What do I have to put out there? What do I think are my constraints? Or what am I afraid of? Where's a gap? So take 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll play the Jeopardy song and let you write for a few minutes, and then we'll come back and talk about some of that. This time I'm not going to make you get up and walk around yet, but find somebody to pair with and do the pair and share, and just pick out 1 or 2 things that you are comfortable sharing with someone else, and I'll give you a few minutes to bounce those off. If you want to ask a question of the person who you're talking to, saying, I'm playing with this, or I'm experimenting with this, what do you think? Or do you have any resources for this? Feel free, but just spend a few minutes sharing about what's in your anticipated future right now, your desired future. What did you hear about the future? And share your own piece, not that somebody shared with you, because we don't know where they are with going public, with where their future is. But what did you find out about yourself in that exercise?
I want to teach.
You want to teach?
I want to teach.
Cool.
Yes. I'm not sure if it's in a classroom or within my own organization, but I have a passion for teaching.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. What else? Yeah.
I want to be a stand-up comedian.
You can tell me some great stories?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. All right. Well, now you know who to look for at lunch. Or right? Okay, yeah.
I learned I am not afraid of anything.
Awesome.
Wow. Wow.
I can rub against you. That's great. Great. Anybody else? Yeah.
I learned I want too many things at once as one of my constraints.
Okay.
I would like to just, I'm only 23 and I've always been kind of a fast mover. My mom says I always need to slow down. Like for instance right now I'm getting married, buying a house, and learning a new job. We would actually like to start having kids soon too. So, so I just need to figure out what I want to focus on.
Yeah, yeah. One of my wise friends from business school, and back then I didn't want to believe her because of course I'm afraid of missing anything, so I want everything at once.
Yeah.
And she used to say, you can have everything. You just can't have it all at once. A little bit of truth in that from from my age perspective. But if you're doing everything at once, I say go for it. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it'll sort out, right?
Yeah,
It'll sort
exactly.
out.
That's what I keep saying.
Right. You're experimenting. You're trying a lot. Yeah. Great. Great. Good. So now from this future that we can now picture, stand-up comedian, teacher, right, everything, fearless forever, we've got this future out there. Now I'd like to invite you to look at your current reality. Where are you right now? What is your foundation? What are your rocks? What do you know about yourself? Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to write again, and we're going to do a different kind of pair and share. You probably know some people in this room, and you probably don't know a lot of other people in this room. But you've all had a chance to sort of get sort of initial impression. We all have our hard copy to the world, right? The story that we show up, what we show up in and with, how we show up in a room, what we think when we first see someone. So I'm going to ask you to find someone and say, I hope you can take this into your future. I hope you can take this into your future. And use it in terms of what you have seen in this person in this moment. So I would say to you, I'm sorry, I can't read your name, Hannah. I would say to Hannah, Hannah, I hope you can take your ability to juggle so many things into the future. Right? Now, I had a tip-off with her, right? But you'll have other people who you may have met where you may have something. So we're just going to do that real quickly. Find somebody. I hope you can take this into your future. Ready, go? So did anybody come out away with an insight from someone else that surprised you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah? Can I hear a couple? So insights from other people that other people had about you. Yes?
Someone told me that to keep being the joyful person that I am and my energy, and I told her I'm usually that, but I wasn't feeling like I was that today. And so I told her, thank you, so I was able to say something nice to her. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. And you show up as that even when you don't always feel like that.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Cool. Who else? Yes.
That I actually have like an outgoing, friendly personality persona.
Uh-huh.
I kind of think that I'm more antisocial.
Interesting. Yeah, the compare contrast the stories we make up about ourselves compared to what other people see is sometimes really interesting in that. Yeah, great. Anybody else from over here? Anybody want to speak up? All right, we can be shy. That's right. You have to force anything here. Awesome. So that's kind of an interesting exercise to do in a group where people don't know each other, because in some ways people know who we are and see how we show up, even if they don't know all about us, right? We take that around. I sometimes get really interesting insights from people or surprising feedback. It's like, really? Okay, that's what you see? How interesting. So that core foundation is what you're building on. And, you know, you could talk about them as these are my key assets, or these are the things that I know where I am. We didn't work the shadow side of this, but in terms of your foundation, the stuff that, you know, the phrase, whatever got you here won't get you there, there's a little bit of truth to that too. Look at what you need to drop. You know, look at what you need to let go of. And sometimes you say, yeah, I may not want to drop that. I want to take all the lessons I got from something hard forward. Because there's a lot of ways of flipping things into, oh my gosh, if I had not gone through this hard time, I would have no idea what I was capable of. So you see what we're doing here is a lot of what we're doing here is building community. Let's see, who started this morning by, it was Jody who started this morning, wasn't it you who said, you don't get someplace by yourself? Somebody said that this morning?
Someone, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know anybody who gets where they go by themselves. It's really, really, really hard. Maybe a hermit who lives in the woods and writes, you know, amazing philosophy, but very few of us get to where we are by ourselves. So building community, if you want to go back and find that person's business card later and say, wow, you saw something in me I don't usually see about myself, let's go have coffee. So I encourage you to take this exercise out of the room. So, are you looking forward to exploration? The next piece? Sure. So, here's the shifts in perspective you're looking for. And there are a lot of options there, right? So, spend a little time thinking about how you might shift your perspective, what you might do. And to do that, you might have to change the way you think about stuff. Okay? So, get up, take a different chair where you're going to have a different perspective, and write this place in somebody else's chair. So, I'm noticing that we're running close on time, so I'm going to compress a couple of things, but I encourage you to work on this more later. And the place that I want to make sure you leave today with is your list of what you might want to do to pursue some of these things. What would be your first steps? Are people familiar with the change formula? Does this look familiar to anybody? Anybody who's done OD work or has been in any kind of organizational development probably knows this. And that is that, yeah, you can scooch around if you like, and that is that change happens, change equals vision times dissatisfaction times tangible first steps, all of which has to be greater than resistance. And in this case, who provides the resistance? Yeah, that would be us, right? So this is used in organizational change, but I find it incredibly helpful also in thinking my own change. It's like, okay, I have this vision, but I'm not uncomfortable enough to do anything about it. Or I'm really uncomfortable about it, have dissatisfaction, but I don't have a vision. And I know things are about to happen when I both have, okay, this is where I think I want to go. Yes, I don't want things to stay status quo, and I start making steps. I make that phone call, I take that class, so it's a big jump from a plane, whatever. And to overcome my own resistance to my own state of comfort, my own current status quo kind of environment. Yeah.
So it's literally a greater than symbol?
It's a greater than symbol. I know, I always have to tell people what I draw. Yeah. First steps, tangible first steps.
You can repeat the whole thing, Cynthia.
Yeah, sure. Change, I almost put it in a slide and then I thought, I don't even know if I'm going to say it. Change equals vision times dissatisfaction times tangible first steps, all of which, that's why the greater than is so much bigger, all of which have to be greater than resistance.
Self-resistance.
In this case, it's self-resistance. In an organization, it's organizational resistance. So, but for me, it works for
boss resistance.
yeah, it could be any of that. But things don't change. If the resistance is stronger than the desire for change, nothing will happen. Right? This is I did not make this up. I would love to claim to be this brilliant. You can also find it on the interwebs. It's under there. If you Google change interweb, it'll show up. All right. So now that you've started thinking about your exploration piece, oops. Start thinking about what your tangible first steps would be. So you've got the sheet in there, and some of the things that constitute tangible first steps are networking, getting inspiration, checking out ideas, making lists of people, doing some research, prototyping something, trying it out. Like if you want to be a teacher, try it out, right? Teach a seminar, teach a workshop where you are. If you want to be a stand-up comedian, start telling jokes at dinner, you know, or tell your stories at dinner. But those tangible first steps things, or watch a lot of videos, learning, networking, etc. So make yourself, I'll just give you a few minutes to jot down, here are a couple of things that I am committed to doing in the next, we'll be generous and give you a month. In the next month, what are you committed to doing? Who has one or two tangible first steps that they're willing to commit to out loud in front of a group of supportive and friendly women? Where's our fearless person?
I want to research my new line of business, and I will do that by networking and researching on the internet, and I want to do that by my birthday, June 15th.
Awesome. First step, yay.
Mine is just networking, learning what other jobs are out there, what you can do, and what everybody else does, really. And I wanted to do that just by collecting business cards, and while I'm here, which is a great place to network, and then actually following through with the little time and actually emailing and calling.
Excellent. Follow through is critical. Yeah. Great. Who else?
Enroll at SOU.
Woo!
Yeah, oh, look at that! Southern Oregon University right here.
Southern Cal. And the registrar is here. I sat with her at breakfast, or at the opening remarks. The registrar is here, and she started immediately in a conversation with somebody who was thinking about starting up again. Enroll at SOU. Awesome. Anybody else? Tangible first steps that you want to share? And or commit to? There's something about saying it out loud, folks. Yeah, Jeannie.
I'm going to get a copy of the position description for the current position description of the job that I want.
Nice. Yes. I thought psychology. Yes.
So I am going to write a curriculum for a children's theater class I want to teach.
Awesome. Great. Great. Anybody else? Yes.
I'm going to develop some speaking points for a workshop that I would like to present at a conference this fall.
Excellent. Great. Great. So there is that something about saying it out loud in a room full of people. It's like, yes, I am going to do this. So whoever your room full of people is, I mean, we are here today. There may be other rooms full of people, but there is something about saying those commitments out loud that kind of gets us going and wanting to do them, gets us motivated. So you have a career map in a blank one, so fill out those worksheets, make a mess of them, and then if you want to distill them onto something clean and shiny, you have this in your notebook to use. And in addition to the resources in this room, and part of the reason I have you say a lot of these things out loud or share and pair is because there may be people right in this room who can help support you in this inflection point, in this change in perspective, who can tell you what they see in you. I mean, honestly, I think that's an incredibly helpful exercise, is to ask people honestly when you're having coffee or lunch with them, what do you see in me that you think I could take forward into my next venture? It may just validate what you already know about yourself, or you may get some insights and learn something new. So you have the blank piece to work on. I am such a nerd that I start with books for almost everything. And I brought a couple just because I wanted to make sure I mentioned them. I'm going to just start with my favorite. Aisha Bursell has written a book called Design the Life You Love. She also does a workshop called Design the Work You Love. Same principles. It's deconstruction, reconstruction. She just came out with this book, and she does workshops all over the country. So if you want to write down her name, it's in the book. It's there. If you Google her, you can get on her website, and she's phenomenal. I brought her out as a guest speaker and did her workshop, I think, twice last year. She's really great. And if you like a design perspective, if you have an artist's heart, she's a wonderful person to work with. A few others that I'll just go quickly by. This is a classic called Transition Bridges. It's an old book. If you're going through major transitions in your life, this is incredibly insightful thing to read. And it's short and it's interestingly written, so I found it very digestible. Some of these that I just snacked on, there's a book called Callings, one called A Passionate Life Launch, A Passionate Guide to the Rest of Your Life. Then there's a Jesuit priest who I really like, Chris Lowney, who wrote Heroic Living. He also wrote Heroic Leadership. And he talks about monastic orders as being these organizations that have survived millennia, right? So they're doing something right in terms of organizational development or leadership development. So he's really interesting. This is sort of a gift store book, 5, I think there's one called 10, but it's clever and it's cute and it gives you some ideas about how to sort of like break open your brain, get different perspectives, do fun little exercises around what your future might look like. Because if there's one thing I know from coaching people for 20 years, it's that the direction you set your feet in is the destination you're going to end up at. So point your feet in the right direction, or the direction that you think looks interesting. You can always change paths, but where your feet, the direction your feet are pointed in is where you're going to end up. Then there's another resource that Mara just shared with me, which is for those of you who may be considering a third act kind of career. That's now becoming really big. That learn, earn, serve in that sort of trilogy, and there's a lot of people looking for that sort of last career, and so this is a magazine that's a resource for that. And then there's Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, which I loaned to somebody, or I would have brought that as well. And my opinion is that the people who panned her in the reviews didn't read the book. It's got really interesting things in it. So those are some resources on your journey, and that may help you sort of flesh out what this inflection point looks like. And I always love this quote, whatever you do, begin it, or whatever you want to do, begin it, because there's so much power and action in just that first step. Whether this conference is the first step, whether exchanging cards is the first step, whether networking is your first step. And what's funny is when I went to look this up, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's a Goethe quote. Well, they now think it was a mountain climber, and it was, anyway, whatever. Just to have some attempted accuracy. It's either Goethe or W.H. Murray.
Don't fall.
What? Don't fall. That's right. So I want to wrap us up in time for lunch. Thanks for playing, and I would love your feedback. So.